I wanted to kick this off because this is near and dear to my heart. At Gen, we have so much opportunity to engage with the ecosystem leaders, whether it's the entrepreneurial support organizations or the policy guys or the research guys or the investors. But we don't get nearly enough time, excuse me, my back to you, we don't get nearly enough time to engage with the entrepreneurs. But that's because we're mostly a B2B network, unlike many of you who are running competitions, who are really a B2C network. And so for us, entrepreneurs are vitally important to watch especially carefully because there's fewer of them actually in the Global Entrepreneurship Network. And so can you hear? Okay. So we're very keen to make sure that we have a constant flow of new innovators and new entrepreneurs into the community. And unlike some of these great leaders, we're not actually providing a lot of support directly to entrepreneurs, but we're doing it through third parties. And we're also not doing it to scale. So, guys like you, Noodle, know how to build algorithms. And, I guess I'm a corporation. I can come to you guys and you can search hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs and give me, these are the guys you might be interested in. Whereas for us, we have a Gen Starters community, which is made up of about 100 entrepreneurs. And that's the size we want it. And the reason is because we want to do face-to-face, personalized assistance. But to me, these guys have really been the sort of base of the pyramid of Global Entrepreneurship Network. We came together in many different ways, but as a grassroots movement. And so when we think of who is the best people to help us make sure that Gen stays honest and is guided by the entrepreneurs, it's through these competitions. So I tell you it like that because I wanted you to know why Gen is interested in what we call Gen competitions, because we're interested in making sure that this is our reality check at all times about what we're doing, that we have a community of entrepreneurs that you guys have suggested are the kind of entrepreneurs that we should all be listening to. So the purpose of this discussion was for you to get an update on what's happening in these phenomenal competitions that have been very much associated with Gen, and for us to have a conversation about that. To also, I want to say, Carl Schramm, who is the former president of the Kauffman Foundation, just came out with a book called Burn the Business Plan. And while there's a lot of really interesting things, I told Carl, you're not coming here because you're beaten down on these competitions. And I said, and I just want for the record, and I did this in my write-up about his book, I said nice things about it, but I just said there's one thing that you're wrong about, and this is perhaps the most important way I think that entrepreneurs can be able to get visibility, can hone their pitching skills, but more importantly, can meet the kind of mentors and mentor investors that they need, and to be able to accelerate on their path to scaling. And so I also just wanted to say a huge thank you and congratulations to these people that have a growing extraordinary networks of entrepreneurs and investors as a result of their competitions, and how we really hope that everybody in the Gen community will help them succeed. So without further ado, I'll turn over to Torsten. But before I do, I want to let you know, we've been working together for 10 years, and at last, we've come up with a project to do together. So we're going to merge Gen's Startup Compete platform with UNoodle. We're going to bring the Global Entrepreneurship Network to the UNoodle technology. And so UNoodle Connect is going to be rolling out this spring or this fall, this summer. And so we'll be, I'm sort of now turning to Torsten as a colleague, very much part of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, and obviously an expert in this field. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Johnny O, as we learned yesterday. Look, this is a loud place. I hope you can hear us, but I'm glad that the room is full. It's amazing. There are a couple of seats here for those in the back. So it's a very intimate venue, but really hard to hear. So we'll do as best we can. If not, you'll just have to move closer or come and find us afterwards. So Just a clarification on this on the announcement with Startup Compete and Unoodle. So we're going to call it Unoodle Compete, not Connect. He said Unoodle Connect, but that's fine. Unoodle Compete, and it is a merger of the two, except that it is on the Unoodle technology. So if you are a current Unoodle technology user, don't worry, it's the same platform. But if you are on Startup Compete, we're going to migrate you over, and we're going to take really good care of you, and we're going to incorporate some of the Gen, both branding, and we'll start doing some more research with Gen and with Kaufman that I'm super excited about. I love research and learning from all of this stuff, and that's really why we're here. So that is the segue. It is a treat to have these 4 people with us today, because these are 4 of the arguably biggest and most influential startup competitions in the world. And I have been in this field for 10 years, so I absolutely know. And because we're not that many people, we're going to spend a relatively short amount of time by each of them to tell you what they're doing and how it's different from one another. But ideally, let's get some questions. What can we learn from these guys that have all been in this field for a while? What can we learn about the amazing powers of the competitive nature of startups? That's really all. That's it for today, and we have a little under an hour to do it. So I'm going to kick off by a quick introduction here. We have Carla Tanas from the Future Agro Challenge, and we have Hendrik Halbe from Get in the Ring. We have Sarah Sanders from the State Department. Why did I say Sanders? Where did that come from? Staten. Sarah Staten from the Tech Eye and Catalyst programs from the State Department. And then we have Rasmus Cherning, which is somewhat hard to say, from the Creative Business Cup and all of those I think many of you have heard of. So that's who we have today. And I think maybe Carla, if you can give us a few minutes about the Future Agro Challenge and what you guys have been building, and let's start there. Sounds good?
So Future Agro Challenge actually started from a need. We are actually a Greek organization, and it was due to the economic crisis in Greece that we had to address the youth that were leaving. So as part of entrepreneurs being ourselves who were successful, we said, how can we help the youth? As such, we looked into a sectoral approach, and one of that, as I'm going to focus on agriculture today, was agri-food. It's one of our key industries. So we started on a national level, actually, with no intention to become a global competition. We started based on the need of Greece. And when we started back in 2014, there was really not much going on in innovation in agriculture as far as agripreneurs and competition and how to make agripreneurs come forward. So we got a lot of media attention because of this initial phase that we took us forward because of a need. And within 1 year, we grew into 30 countries, and in 2 years, 60 countries, and in 3 years, we keep growing. But it's really like a startup per se. I mean, we have to figure it. Every year we're figuring it out. Every year we're getting bigger, and every year we're restructuring. But our aim as Future Agro Challenge is how to make agriculture sexy to the youth, number one, and how we can make agri-food become economically a form of for national agendas to produce economical and sustainable economic growth in their regions. And we see now that we are a global competition, we see there's a big difference in the types of needs they need around different regions because they have different challenges they have to face. And the food supply chain system is very complex. I mean, you have to deal with food, you have to deal with culture, you have to deal with experience, you have to deal with education, and you most of all have to also deal with policy because that plays a big blockage in what's going on. So trying to address all of these, the competition plays a very fundamental role because we get to bring the innovators forward and they could solve all these problems that we are seeing. But as a network, we're able to help them connect the dots, understand and map out what's going on, and bring forward any type of solutions we can at hand. So I don't want to take too much time from the rest of them. Future Agro Challenge is now in 64 countries. It's running across 5 continents. And we're happy to say that we are addressing the gap between the developing countries in which they're creating such progressive technology like blockchain in agriculture, AI, robotics, and helping nutrition go forward, creating superfoods, or even gene editing. But we do also want to show and produce that in less developed countries, they are also innovating over there. They are innovating in indigenous ways that we need to hear and retract. And I just want to give an example from what happened to our summit yesterday. At the Global Entrepreneurs Summit that we had yesterday, it was interesting, and it was a 3-day event, but it was interesting to see the different approaches. And we had actually an Israeli startup who's doing grasshoppers. And this Israeli startup was, he's been invested, he's going forward, he's doing really well, he's ready to take on a huge market. And he's, the first person who's saying that he's commercialized grasshopping farming in a way that's become sustainable. Now, when he was introduced to the rest of the entrepreneurs we had coming from so many different countries, the ones coming from Africa were looking at him and saying, that's not innovation, we eat grasshoppers all the time. So it's important that we look at innovation from all angles and make sure that we can see it, that they also have things to innovate for us and not only take it from one way. So that's Future Agro Challenge in a nutshell.
This Israeli guy was one of our winners in Singapore. So cool. Merde. Okay. Hey guys, Hendrik here. Hendrik Holba from Get in the Ring. Basically, I'm also in the field of entrepreneurship stimulation the last 12 years. And 6 years ago I said, okay guys, I think after visiting all these events, we have to do it a bit different because we want to stimulate youth. And to be honest, these events are quite boring for a lot of people. And I think when you have fun with each other, you also connect and you do business. Second thing I saw is that pitching is very horrible. They always forget a lot of things about the team, about the business model. So we said, let's change the way of pitching. And the third thing is, 6 years ago I said I want to connect them globally, because if they really want to get to the next level, they have to have the more American mentality that they want to take over the world. But when you do that, you need to know people around the world. That makes you global. We did research on that. So we combined these three things, and we did a bit of a crazy thing. We put a boxing ring in the event. We put 2 startups and we let them compete to each other to get attention of you guys, of the audience. And why? Because I think if they get a podium, literally a podium where they can talk about their company in a fun way, they connect to you guys. And in every audience there are people that can help you. There are either investors, people that know investors, there are talent, there are corporates that can work with you. And that's basically our philosophy. Getting them podium for them to get connected. We did that in Rotterdam for the first time in 2012. It was a bit of a crazy event. I was scared because people maybe said, oh, this you cannot do that. 2 startups in a boxing ring. We did rounds, so they have to talk about the team, about the business model, and both they have to give 30 seconds, which makes an efficient pitch. But what happened in 2012 is that a lot of countries asked me, Hendrik, can I do the same? So to make a long story short, in 4 years' time, we are now in 100 countries. Stable. We do 150 events per year, and all the winners we gather in our global meetup, which this year is in Portugal. The year before was in Singapore. The year before was in Colombia, and before that was in Rotterdam. And it's very cool. It's the end of May this time in Portugal, in Cascais, Lisbon, and we have all the winners of all these events together, meaning someone from maybe South Africa with someone from Israel, and they're all different levels because we have Get in the Ring, maybe clean tech, or maybe Get in the Ring in Kosovo or whatever. So that's a very interesting thing. What we see is that all the startups that we have in our finals get funded. And the next thing we do is now connecting to the global partners like corporates and to governments. We have around 100 pilot projects we are stimulating now. So for ING, ABN AMRO, we just had an event in China now, 2 days ago with Fusun. We connected 13 entrepreneurs to the corporate there. And I believe in that because we started out as an investment model. But I think it's in the end much stronger if you have a corporate there who can launch your idea and be a launching customer. So if you want to stimulate entrepreneurship in a different way, in a fun way that people talk about in your region, you take again a ring event and we connect the startup to the world with our platform. Anushka, did I miss something? This is my team, Anushka and Mira, if you want to talk to them. And they are kicking my ass if I do something wrong, so that's why.
I want to see that. All right, well, I am Sarah State, and I'm from the U.S. Department of State, which is a little bit different than the other colleagues that I have here on the stage. And you might be asking yourself, why does the Department of State run an entrepreneurship program? Well, so the program itself is called Global Innovation Through Science and Technology, and it is tackling one of the largest cultural issues for science. Scientists traditionally see academia as the be-all, end-all. They publish, maybe they get some patents, but then it stops there, and there's so much latent economic capacity sitting in the lab that we, through global entrepreneurship, or through global innovation through science and technology, or GIST, try to work with those very early stage, perhaps curious but not knowing where to go, entrepreneurs. We use competitions where we host at maybe the Global Entrepreneurship Summit or fantastic events here like the Global Entrepreneurship Congress to be able to get them out into the world of entrepreneurs so that they can see that there is a viable opportunity through entrepreneurship. We've been around since 2011. We also complement through a variety of other education programs like boot camps. There's going to be a taping of our monthly online interactive program where people from all around the world can ask experts questions. Over here at the media, you can go out and say hi to the world. We usually have about 500 people for any given month tune in, so it's a lot of fun at 5 o'clock here at the Media Center. And then what comes out of this? Where do we benefit? So we take American experts and we connect them. We work with a variety of American companies like Amazon Web Services, who help sponsor some of the prizes here today, or Alice, an AI-based mentorship portal. And really, it's trying to create those connections, and that's where we see competitions. You mentioned more of the divisive pieces of competitions here in the beginning, where you bring out that competitive spirit, but I also see the other side of things, where you're making the world smaller. I have brought several of my alums here, and some of the folks I met in 2014 at the GES in Kenya, they're best friends even though they live in Brazil and one lives in Morocco. And so I think that competitions also have this kind of uniting factor that can't be understated.
And that's very true. My name is Rasmus, and I'm from the Creative Business Cup. Okay, that's too close. Hello. Creative Business Cup is, as you can hear in the name, a competition, and as you can see on the logo, we're very much inspired by the GEN community, and we started in 2012 and had 17 of the national partners here from GEN join us, and now it's close to 70 national partners that have joined CBC. How are we different than some of the other competitions? We focus on, I would say, the non-tech parts, that what is innovation is not necessarily an algorithm, an app, or a website, or an ICT innovation. It could be something else. So we are for startups in the creative economy, and also very much how startups in the creative economy can support other sectors. Our winner in 13 was Teddy the Guardian. That's a medtech product. In 14, it was Professor Y, an edtech product, and so on. So we are very much about how can creative people that do not necessarily have a engineering background or a business background still come up with great business ideas and succeed. So, and just like you said, I think we are a competition, and we need to find a winner. This year it was China with Cell Robots that won. Number 2 was Iceland with Genki Instruments. Number 3, Lebanon with BuildBits. But I think all of the startups that participated created a community, got connected to each other and also to the investors present, to the jury members, and got a lot of interesting media attention. Some of the new initiatives that we make is in the sectorial. So we realized quite a while ago that some of our startups fall into the food sector. So we send those to Future Agro Challenge. We already have a collaboration there. Some of them fall into other sectors, and we're doing a sector-specific focus on adventure startups. So startups that will get you your adrenaline and your heart going, and that's going to be started on the 7th of August in Colorado with Amy Cosper, that some of you know. We're also launching some other sector-specific ones, realizing how they spill over into other sectors. And we also have regional initiatives in MENA with UNIDO, in Africa with CBC Kenya. So we have lots of different sector-specific ones that we do. And yeah, it's a great community to be part of, and I'm looking forward to the discussions. Let's get into it.
Let's compete.
Now let's collaborate.
So I think thanks for the intro, guys. And there are clearly very different initiatives. And I think for you don't all have to answer this question, but I'd love to hear a little more about the format of a competition, because I think all of you are also doing other stuff. It's like competition and training programs and workshops and other things. But tell me specifically about the competition format. Why is that good? Like, why are you choosing that to achieve what you're doing? And you don't all have to take it, but whoever has some comments to share on that topic, on the competition format.
Well, for me, just as active in 136 countries and territories around the world, and we're a relatively small program. But what a competition format allows us to do is we can go out through all of the countries that we work in and then try to find the individuals that are ripe to be able to go to that global stage and be able to utilize those opportunities the best, right? So at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, for example, we took about 20 individuals and we allowed them to pitch in front of the entire summit, and each one of them was able to walk off of that stage and find someone who was interested in investing in them. But if we didn't use the competition format, we wouldn't have been able to find those 20 that would be able to utilize that opportunity.
Correct. I think if you join a competition, the great thing that you have, there's a lot of local pitching things and everything, but you're part of something bigger, which makes the whole inspiring part for startups to join much appealing and much more like, oh, there's something next to that. Because I did a lot of events and then we were finished with the event and we were finished. But now it continues to a global thing, and the startups are very excited that they win something to go to the next country to visit other entrepreneurs around the world. And I think that's a feature that's difficult to copy, and if you join something that can really help also putting you on a global scale because you're part of something bigger.
And lastly, a competition creates almost lastly, third argument would be a competition creates a momentum. It creates deadlines. It creates things to do at certain times. You know, you need to finish and you need to find your startups. You need to send them off, and so it creates a natural momentum and a timeline for everyone to move forward. That is very beneficial, and also for us organizing, we need to have the jury in place, and that actually is good for us.
In our case, I think it's also a global dialogue. We deal a lot of farmers, so it's putting an entrepreneurial mindset into them as well, and changing, really revolutionizing this industry by getting farmers who are now at the end user to become the first of the chain rather than at the end of the chain just taking on products that we all end up eating and then complaining and controversing about. So it's really producing an impact and a global dialogue of how we could move forward and a network in this discussion.
And actually on the topic of impact, that's another really hard thing, because it's not always that a winner, the big winner of a competition, ends up being the most successful startup later on or project later on. So when you guys have to go out and fundraise for this, which we all do, how do you talk about the impact that you have on society? What are some, I guess, measures or means that you use to describe impact of what you're doing?
Yeah, we don't. No, for me the most measurable thing is the startups are happy what we did. So I think we always forget the main customer, the main thing where we do it is the startup. And nice all the policy things, and we can have a lot of bullshit figures about how many employees how many employment and everything. We can figure it out, but it's very difficult, and I think it's difficult to say as a small competition or as one event we did all these things. For me, it's a startup that gives us a grade that says, okay, I had something for the event, and I grade that by if they're coming back or not. And that's my thing. Of course, we do sometimes like how many things we did or how many countries. Another thing is maybe capital, if they raise capital or if they have clients. So we try to do that, but it's very hard to track.
So sadly, I have a very different master that I am trying to get money from to be able to continue to do these types of programs, and the government is kind of notoriously difficult in being able to see the impact, so I do have to stay a little bit more to like solid impact metrics. But in addition to that, so we do, revenue, how many people are staying in our programs, and we do see a shift from people who are kind of in the entrepreneurial community at large. But I think in addition to that, one of the things that we're able to also chart is trajectories. People who come back and give kind of case studies about, because they competed in our competition in X year, we were able to connect them with a particular mentor who helped them get through the FDA regulatory process. And now they're headquartered in Beirut, but they employ over 40 Americans in the United States. And that is because directly they worked with our program. And so we're able to kind of capitalize on those opportunities to also show benefit to the United States, because frequently there's a desire to be able to create those linkages.
We have just yesterday, right, Caroline, handed in a report to the Danish government where we were measured on 15 or 16 different KPIs on what we delivered. But that is, of course, what we delivered for the Danish government. And a lot of it is also related to what do we do for other startups, not just Danish startups. So there's a mixture of some clear KPIs that we can measure, yes, no, how many, almost fulfilled or completely fulfilled. And then there's all the great stories that we try to and will in the future be better at telling what happened to Teddy the Guardian and what happened to this and this and this. And when we heard that, okay, number 5 from Israel now finally made it in at the H&M Sustainability Award, these kind of stories make us happy, but we need to also tell them and document them much better than we do so far.
As well for us, so it's the numbers that you need, the how many partnerships, how many types of investments and so forth, but also by connecting different types of entrepreneurs from around the world, we're able to map out and better understand what changes need to be. Being entrepreneurs ourselves, we had actually 2 breakthroughs throughout the summit. We brought in the chairperson of the World Food Security, as well as the president of the World Farmers Organization. There's a lot a lot of blockages are happening to entrepreneurs, to farmers themselves. So what we see is that while technology is moving at a very fast pace, policy doesn't move. And in order to bridge that gap, we need to bring all these stakeholders together. So the breakthrough we had this past 3 days is discussing with the policymakers up at the UN level is that we're going to actually collaborate in bringing in an innovation mechanism so that we can move policy as fast as innovation is moving together. So there is huge impact that we could do from the bottom up because we want the top to be able to hear from the bottom.
I agree.
Because policy is very difficult to change fast.
What we did for our partner in Israel, we had Shenkar College. They had a hard time getting a creative industries policy in Israel. So we invited them, a whole delegation from the Ministry of Economic Development in Israel, came to CBC, made a special seminar for them, had them meet stakeholders from the region, and now there is a creative industries policy that will, in Israel, that will benefit them. So you can do these kind of initiatives, and we are trying always to invite policymakers. I know Caroline has been talking to all the Interreg people from the EU will come next year to our global or this year to our global finals. So these kind of influencing policy makers is something that you do on the spot here, and you show them that you make a difference.
Well, and I actually think that this might be one area where having an entrepreneurship program in the State Department makes absolute perfect sense, is because we're able to simultaneously have policy roundtables adjacent to some of our events. Actually, we're planning one here very soon, and the folks that we work with, they then become the advocates as we create these stakeholder meetings. We're constantly in bilateral dialogues, and there are several instances, like with the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, for example, in Kenya. Kenya had debtors' prisons before it, and there was a conversation that went forward about if you're wanting to host, then certain types of regulatory reforms are necessary, and now Kenya doesn't have debtors' prisons, and it's been made more business comfortable for startups. And so I think that programs, whether it's associated with government entities or not, we can all be partners in being able to get policy put forward.
So in answering your question, policymakers are humans. So a lot of, yes. And what I learned from our policy session is that policymakers actually make up policies by gut and emotion. They don't really have measurable results. So one of the reasons while we were at the UN ourselves is when you look at the SDGs, you all notice that we have these 17 SDGs that have been rolled out to the world. But nobody realizes that there are no measurable results to these SDGs. So how are we going to actually reach 2030 with no measurable results? So these are the type of indications that we need to bring to them as entrepreneurs ourselves, that at the end of the day, this is business. This is actually, we need to solve the problem. We're entrepreneurs. It's not just profit-oriented, but we need to solve problems. And bringing in these entrepreneurs, we need to bring forward these voices. So that's why it's important from a bottom-up approach how we could address these problems. And then bring in the policymakers who are the humans to just understand. I mean, we had the chairperson there, the chairperson of food security, of the World Food Security, these long terms and names that you never can pronounce. But he was listening to an academic and a researcher and then a group of nerds who are working on gene editing. And he finally was able to better understand the difference between gene editing technology from the controversialities from GMOs, and now we'll take it back to a different discussion up at the top level. So it's a lack of communication, it's a lack of understanding, and most of all, we understand it's a lack of trust between the stakeholders. So.
We don't do anything with policy making. We are solely involved with startups and helping them directly. But what we do is we connect them to the governments, and we try the governments to persuade them to use startups for solving problems, to be client. So that's one thing I'm very keen in, because a lot of governments have a lot of spending and they have a lot of budgets, but a lot of times it goes to the big guys. And we are busy with a lot of governments now and municipalities and other organizations to let them having startups as a launching customer. So again, we are really focused on the startups always to get them business and get them investors. And I try to get out of the policy making.
Yeah, I think in general on policies, on entrepreneurship policies, I find that governments generally hate making mistakes. They're extremely risk averse, and that's much more important to not make mistakes than to do the great new thing. So gatherings like these, the Ministerial, Startup Nation Summit, what Jen is doing and a lot of others are doing, helps because it's going to be more obvious if you made a mistake. If your program is not working, if whatever you're doing is not working, it's going to be more obvious when you talk to a lot of other people and they talk to you. And so I do think that just that exchange actually will help governments from copying from each other what actually works. And that is, I guess, part of the answer. So we're now at the time where I want to hear if there are any particular topics or questions that you want to ask either some or all of the panelists about here. I can see Jose Checo has one.
Yes, I'm Jose Checo from Dominican Republic. I'm a customer of Get in the Ring and Future Agro Challenge also. Looking to be on CBC, but not yet. We need... Okay, but really I just wanted a couple of comments about what I value about Get in the Ring and Future Agro Challenge, and what I have learned a lot from them. Basically, if Get in the Ring will provide an evaluation process that is unique, and it really drives, you do it by round, so that creates a different form of evaluation than you know in normal competition. In normal competition, you evaluate the whole thing. Now you evaluate, so it creates a process and an energy, and they have to step up. The first time we did it as a government, the first time, then we passed it on to someone in our country. And really was incredible how the competitor step up when they have to, now we have to compete again against the best two. And the final was incredible. So really, that improved, that helped them a lot. You want me to finish with that?
One thing I notice with our people that stimulate entrepreneurship, I think, in my perspective, we pamper them too much. We're too much saying, oh, this nice startup, and we help them. But as soon as they leave the incubator or they're outside, it's a hard work. It's a marketplace, and they gotta compete out. And that's why I like the competitiveness in Get in the Ring, because in the end, you say, oh, why do you let them compete? It's a pity, or it's not real. No, there's a market, and they will get smacked down if they don't do a good job. So we try to simulate that. And I think it's important not to pamper them all the time. Give them reality. Give them reality.
And about Future Agro Challenge, really, what I love for the first time is what the categories, the verticals that they have, divided the competition on. So you guide more the status or the competitors to try to focus on some channels. That really helps. I have learned a lot from that, and I have used a lot of that in our local competitions. Also, that's something that you gain participating with them, because normally you have your own thing, and you extrapolate some things. And I don't know if one question for Torsten, that was going to be my question, is are they going to run and you do compete?
That's not a question for me. This is a question for everyone else. But we can take that afterwards. Thanks for those insights. Any other questions, Amy?
I really apologize, but can you tell me a little bit, I still am not understanding the State Department's role in this, and I apologize, I'm not sure I could hear you, but I find it fascinating and very un-States Department-like.
I'm going to take that as a compliment. That is a compliment. I agree. So I'm actually a scientist by trade. I have a PhD in chemistry, which is not necessarily the traditional policy person that you might think about. And we actually try to run just as if it's a startup within the government, which has its own challenges. But I think with the power of doing something like GIST within the government is, one, it builds policy awareness, right? Some of the things that you just spoke about, we become better at being able to do the policy pieces, because it's not just that we're doing GIST, but we get in contact with all of the other implementers and organizations that are in this space. We are really uniquely positioned to be able to engage other policymakers. And then fundamentally, my personal purpose is that we're creating economic opportunity, right? We become enablers of innovators to be able to create successful businesses. It's a rough world out there, but the network that they create through us is powerful. We have embassies and consulates around the world, and we're able to use those resources to the betterment of innovators. And I think that that's, again, a powerful part for how the government can actually play a positive role.
Yeah, and I do also really like your point about making sure that it's not just about the competition. It's about all the connections and moving people forward. And I'd say your program has a very clear both political and economic development aim, which I also really like. I think that's for somebody like the State Department. That is pretty cool that they turn to something like a global competition for this. Hendrik?
Do you include the researchers in the entrepreneur process, and what is their role? Like that's always the.
Thank you so much. I will now plug what we're doing here. So GIST TechEye is our pitch competition. I encourage all of you to stay after the opening plenary tomorrow, because in that same hall, we'll be doing the quick pitch. So each of the competitors will do 3 minutes. Right, so these are folks that are competing in 2 categories. Right now we've consolidated into one, you'll see tomorrow, but it's ideas. People who don't even have prototypes, they might have proof of concept and that's it, as well as early stage startups.
Now I'm confused, but where's the technology part? Because you said there were technologies in the laboratories that you can use.
Right. But just because you have research that says something will happen doesn't mean that you have a prototype that will actually be able to use the in case.
And since we only have 6 minutes left, if you want to know more about Creative Business Cup and our sector-specific original, yes, and you're invited too. There will be a happy hour from 6 to 7 in panel room B, floor M2.
I think my happy hour is also there. He's paying, so if you want to meet us, we are there. So we collaborate, but it's on his bill, okay?
Yeah, so of course this is a great time to advertise whatever sessions you have. So CBC has the 6 o'clock today. You're on after the plenaries, 11 o'clock. You guys have anything? Okay, all right, fair enough. So it is super loud, but if there are any more questions, anybody else? Because if not, what I think, because we're such a small group, let's take maybe 1 or 2 questions, and then I think you should have some time to talk to them individually. That's probably more useful, honestly, than this format. So let's have. Yes, awesome.
Hello, how are you? Just a little question. We're planning to have the Get in the Ring for the kids. Can you explain it?
Get in the Ring for kids.
We're doing a youth initiative now. I didn't talk about that, but we're doing it with Costa Rica and South America. We're trying. My colleague Jochem is doing with that, so he knows all the information. But we have for South America, because youth is a lot of challenges there, and we are making a Get in the Ring youth initiative. So we can talk about it. Our whole range, still 18, like above 18. So we are the same spot. Thanks.
Awesome. Any other final questions? I think, honestly, guys, we should wrap it up here and then have you talk to them individually, because I can't hear anything, you can't hear anything. Thank you so much to these 4 excellent panelists. Thank you, guys.